Hey all, here at OS Reviews. Today we're taking a closer look at an interesting smart translator slash scanner called the Vormer ScanTalker. So aside from the more conventional voice translation, which you can use with the microphone built on in to talk and translate to another language, it also has this scanning component. Maybe there's a particular word on a book or a document you don't understand, you can just scan it in for it to translate, in addition to using regular voice translations as well. And this works with any paper, book, or even the display on a tablet or smartphone. You can also scan. So some of the technical specs, again, it uses 3.5-inch touchscreen quad-core ARM Cortex processor, and the 1,200 milliamp hour capacity battery can last upwards of 8 hours before you need to recharge it. And here's the full list of the 112 languages if you're using the cloud AI translation, although this number is a little bit inflated thanks to different dialects and variants of languages, such as in English you'll find versions like British English, Australian English, which technically I think counts as just one language. But regardless, you can find a pretty good list supported on this device. In terms of packaging contents, aside from the scan translator, we have just a pair of headphones, which are actually using USB Type-C because there's no standard 3.5mm headphone jack, and there's also just a Type-C charging cable included. The scan translator itself has a polycarbonate frame, but doesn't feel too cheap. Here it is next to a regular ballpoint pen as a comparison, and aside from the display, we have just two keys that you use to offer the voice translation. So one of these buttons can be used to control when you're talking in your own language, for example English, and the other side is for the second person so they can talk in their language back and forth. On the edge here we do have a standard volume rocker, and you can kind of give away that underneath it is running on a version of Android. There's a power key there and then just a Type-C port on the edge, and that is pretty much it. We have dual microphones for noise cancellation for the voice translation, and also a built-in loudspeaker that will read the translations out loud, and that's it. So everything is really simple. Here is what the scanner part looks like. It does have two LED lights, so it can illuminate text even if you are scanning in the dark, which is pretty cool. And there's a little liner tool there that tells you where it's actually scanning to try and align things. The display here, 3.5 inches, is one of the larger ones I've seen out of a dedicated portable translator, and it is pretty responsive. It is using a capacitive touchscreen, and again, the UI is simple. It's been optimized to work with just the core features, so it isn't cluttered, and other Android functions like the ability to install other apps or browse the web have been disabled, just like other smart translators we've seen in the past, so it keeps things pretty fast and fluid. It does offer a few gestures though. For example, if we're in a particular list, we can go back just by swiping on the edge there like that, and that jumps us back by one page. And overall, the fluidity of the UI does feel pretty smooth, I have to say, one of the faster ones I've seen out of these dedicated translation units. By default, just applying a bit of pressure on the scanning tip will automatically start doing a quick scan. And let's try doing a demo using this particular sentence just by pressing down, and then we can go at a moderate speed at first to see how it handles that. And afterwards, we're going to wait a second, and you can see it's been recognized. This makes understanding blockchains a necessarily harder task than it must be. We can also have it read out loud to us.
This makes understanding blockchains a necessarily harder task than it must be.
And overall, it got all the punctuation marks right as well, so pretty impressive. Let's try scanning a bit more quickly this time and see how it fares if we just zoom across the page like that. And actually it captured it really without any issues. So the scanning of the camera sensor here is actually very good, as long as you are on a flat surface when you're scanning. If you are putting it onto a uneven surface, or if you're going way too fast, then sometimes you might still get a few pieces wrong, as you can see. So this is just the scanning part, so these are just excerpts in the default language that they are actually typed or written as. If we want to go into the translation part, which is the text translation, we can do the same thing. Let's try this first sentence, and afterwards we are able to translate it into the language that we want. It's going to take a second there to recognize, in this case Chinese as the secondary language. We can change that though by swiping over on the left hand edge, and we can change the language being translated in this full list that we see here, although it seems like translations which have already happened aren't going to change, so we might have to rescan that part since we've changed the language. So for example, let's do this one more time, and now the second translation should be in Spanish. once everything is fully loaded. And you can also edit parts of the text if it's wrong or incorrect just by bringing up the virtual keyboard, as you can see there. It also gives you some auto spell corrections, which is pretty neat. And once again, we're able to see that it is running on Android, really just has a conventional keyboard. It is pretty wide thanks to the stretched aspect ratio, even though the screen size at 3.5 inches is still quite small. But you can definitely do a little bit of correction if you want to type something out and kind of doodle along just like that. And you can see how kind of that keyboard portion looks. Right now it's in Chinese, but I can switch over to English, and now everything will be fully typing out in text. As a whole, the speed of the translations is, again, quite good. It just takes about a second or two for it to snap into focus. Now I can also try a few other things like a dictionary mode. So this is really for a single word that maybe we don't know the definition of, and we can try and search up. So for example, let's try searching what structure means just by scanning that. And it's identified that, and now it's searched it up here, and it's telling us the full definition in English as well as the definition in Chinese. So the dictionary portion, I believe, is only going to be compatible with giving you the root as well as the different use case examples of the word in English and Chinese. So that's something that you aren't able to find, for example, the dictionary meaning of words in Spanish or other languages. It offers translation in the 117 languages, but this dictionary part, again, seems to be restricted to just English/Chinese. In fact, let's give this a quick test by scanning in a Spanish word and see what happens. You can see that, again, the recognition there is a little bit off and the result is empty. However, if we want to scan in a Chinese character, that will work. As you can see there, we can scan in that text and it will try to then pop up the corresponding definition of the word just by tapping along the different characters. So this word here means year in Chinese, and it gives us the full definition in English. Similarly, if you're using the offline scanning translation mode, so if you're not connected to Wi-Fi or the internet, the list of languages is also shorter because it has all the data basically built into the memory of the system itself. And the accuracy, again, might be a little bit lower versus Google Translate and some of the cloud engines in the other mode. But in the offline function, you have access to 3 languages, either Chinese, English, or Japanese, that it can freely translate back and forth between. So let's try doing a quick test in this offline mode. So we have turned off Wi-Fi. We can say this first sentence here, and you can see that it's scan that in, and then the translation here will happen in a moment later. So the accuracy is not going to be quite as high. Some words here are still going to be not fully correct, but as a whole, the speed is not too bad, and the general sentiment is still captured. So as a whole, I would say accuracy here might be closer to 70 or 80% versus in the online mode, it's closer to 90%. Phonetic translation is basically the voice translation, which you can also access just by tapping on the 2 voice buttons below. So let's do a demo of that. Hello, this is a test. And you can see that it's recognized that. And it's read back the translation in Chinese. I feel like the speed on the voice translation part is a little bit faster than the text translation, but both are within acceptable range in terms of not being too annoying, still quite fast to use. And in terms of the languages, again, right now our yellow key here is assigned to English, and then this here is for Chinese. So for example, I can say thank you, 谢谢, and it will hopefully pick that up. Thank you.
Thank you.
If we want to change a language, once again, we can swipe over from the left-hand edge of the screen to go through the full list, and now we have the 117 different options. Now, under your English study, you're able to also learn how to pronounce certain words. So, for example, I can hold down right now to speak in Chinese, and it will tell me how to, I guess, say it in English. So, for example, 谢谢. That is saying thank you.
Thank you.
And it will tell me how to say this word in English is thank you. And now I can follow up by repeating this word in English. So I will say thank you, and it will basically tell me how well I'm pronouncing that word. Thank you. There we go, and it's told me that my total score there was quite high, and it says that the follow-up reading is accurate. Please continue to practice with a different word. Under text excerpt, this is the part where if you do a scan, it will save it. So for example, it will be able to capture this, although maybe one feature they can add would be the ability for you to more easily save this over to your device using Wi-Fi, such as sending it to your email. That is a function that right now isn't available in this particular mode, so you have to use it with the USB cable. to move a copy over to your machine. Under intelligent recording, this is kind of the business recording function where you can just record an entire conversation going on between multiple people. And this part here will also save the entire recording that you can play back along with the finished transcribed text. So once again, you can save a copy of this to then view back, or then when you're connecting to the computer, save the audio clip as well as the text to just copy and paste or use as reference in the future. But again, I would like to see them have the support directly from the translator, since it's connected to the internet already, to send this over using email. That would be nice. But again, right now we have an example where someone was talking in English and someone else was talking in Chinese. It was able to delineate between the languages of multiple people talking and give you the full transcription that you're seeing there. I can also tap there to translate everything into one singular language as well. Pretty handy if you are working in an international kind of business conference and you are trying to understand what people are saying. You can capture, save, and then analyze those notes later on. Finally, under MP3, this is where you're able to also sideload some music on here. So there is 8 gigs of built-in storage, although it doesn't have a micro SD card on the hardware. So that's maybe one other thing that they can consider adding to expand on the built-in memory. But you can also use the space to store some music, and then you can listen to it using your headphones or Bluetooth, so it becomes an MP3 player as well. So that is more or less it as far as our hands-on review of the ScanTalker, which is a very interesting 2-in-1 really, scanning text as well as voice translator. It does have a pretty innovative form factor, and surprisingly the whole thing is quite fluid in terms of the responsiveness, helping you save, preserve, and analyze things later on. You can check out more details if you're interested in the links down below. For now, that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That's been the ScanTalker Interesting Smart AI Translator.